Time to study for your final exam. I'm here to help you study. You can listen to this any place you want to. Dakota's here. I don't know if she's going to be helpful, but she wanted to stick around. Okay, ready. First, I'm going to start with the elements of art. I'll go through them one at a time. You really should know them by now. Okay? Our first element is line. This is my example of lines. This is also an example of British sense of humor. The lines are squeezed out of a tube of paint, and they are there to symbolize the routes on the London Underground, which is their subway. And in fact, some of the trains are called the Tube, which makes it even more of a British kind of pun. Pimlico is a station. You can see that on the tube, and that's the logo of the Underground. So kind of tongue-in-cheek, lots of elements, great lines. Shape. This is a poster from the Museum of Natural History in New York. It has a variety of wonderful shapes: dinosaurs, moon, buildings, window panes. It's from a New York City bus stop shelter, and I think it's a great example of shapes. Our next element is form. We know that form is a three-dimensional version of shape. The dog statue is a form, and the wooden egg that he's holding on his tray is another form. We call them organic forms because they pretty much are things we see in nature, not something geometric that is man-made. So we would call them organic. Space. I have an example on another poster of negative space. The black background is used really dramatically around this very large picture of a basket. The black background sets it off in terms of a very blank surface and a very decorative surface. And the black also echoes the color of the logo of the company, Lou. Color. I am sure that you think I have color wheels all over my house, but I have to say I couldn't find one. And I have to say, you guys probably have this now. I don't think I have to review the primary colors, the secondary colors, the intermediate colors, the complementary colors. I think you've got this. I hope so. So we'll go to the next thing. Our next example is very related to color. Value is something you've had a lot of practice with. You've learned a lot of techniques for representing value. This poster by Milton Glaser, who is one of the most important designers in the world, is an example of many things, but it is an example of values. We have lots of different values of pink. We see a very dark pink. We see lighter and lighter shades of pink till we get to places that are almost white. And they're really all the same pink, just adding lots of white to some of them, a little bit of white, a little bit of black, and a lot more black. Tints, remember, are the lighter ones that you get by adding white, and shades are the darker ones that you get by adding black. Our next element is texture. On the sofa, we have examples of real-life texture that you can feel with your hands. There's a smooth fabric that covers the whole sofa, and then there are little ribbed pieces that you can feel with your fingers, and then the very top layer is velvety, and I refer to this as cheese and crackers when I saw it in the store. So the other kind of texture is the kind that you can't feel. You only know it's there because you recognize texture, and the artist has done a good job of conveying it with a photo or painting or drawing. The principles of art are the different things that artists do using the elements of art to create a piece of art. You can think about the things that you do when you're doing a piece of art. And when you look at a piece of artwork, you will start to think about the principles that the artist used to make their decisions and to do the variety of things that they've done. It's a good tool for analyzing things. The first principle we're going to look at is balance, and we have three kinds. The very first one is symmetrical balance, and the example I use are these very graphic pages that actually were taken out of a children's book, but they become art when they are balanced and framed, and they're kind of funny to look at when you think about having to learn the difference between those words. Anyway, I call them symmetrical because the line divides them in half one way and they're equally spaced the other way. And you don't have to have pictures to be symmetrical. So that's an example of that. The next one is radial symmetry. And radial symmetry literally radiates, or feels like it radiates, from a center point, even if we don't have that center point, and even if we don't have the lines representing the rays coming from the center. These are all concentric circles, and sometimes that's a clue that it might be radial. We know that if we go in any direction, we're going to basically come across the same elements and the same shapes. These are all individual little collages, lots of time to do them, very, very time-consuming, careful work. The artist gave it to me, and I love it. Our next one is asymmetry. Asymmetry feels right in the work of art, but it's not symmetrical like the very first one. We have elements in this poster that balance each other out. You can't divide it in half and say the left side is like the right side, which you could do in the first one. Here we have two big shapes, and they seem to keep the picture from feeling like it's tipping. We have little mice down here. We have a mouse up there. And even though when you look at it, you see they're very different shapes, it doesn't tip. Well, I just tipped it on purpose, but it doesn't tip. You can have uneven symmetry, and it works. Emphasis. Okay, these are examples of emphasis, but they really are also radial symmetry. I don't think when these baskets were made that the artist was specifically trying to get your eye to go to the center, but you can't help it. You really can't look at this and not look at the center because it's darker. It contrasts with all the line weights of the other parts and the very, very thin lines of the fringe on the outside. So you can create emphasis any way you want. You can create it doing the opposite. Unity. Unity is the way that you tie all the elements together. The way that you keep from having something that doesn't feel like it's really part of the picture. Now, of course, you could be doing collage, you could be doing something where it's intentional. But in this case, the colors, the values, the perspective views, all tie these things together. It's a train, and it's a very large ship, and in some places those are very close together because you transition from one to the other. But you can see with the colors of the clouds, they've reflected the color of the platform, and the color of the ship and the train are related. So everything feels right. If we suddenly had a very bright, pure color, it would feel out of place. Our next principle is contrast, and use a poster that's a reproduction of a painting as my example of contrast. It's subtle. Everything in the painting except the berries is almost the same value. We almost can't see that there's a separation between the table and the wall and the bucket. It really all becomes just the light part and totally separate from the little berries, which are very, very, very crisp and dark and detailed, and they pop right out. And yet a lot of people don't even see this when it's hanging on the wall. Our next principle is movement. The traditional examples of movement might be a a flag blowing in the wind, leaves blowing in the wind, waves crashing on the beach, someone's hair blowing in the wind. I chose something a little different. Rene Magritte is a surrealist painter that I've talked about before, and he has a man who seems to be climbing through a wall. I think it's very hard to look at this and not see the movement, not have your eyes climb through the wall with him. And I can't explain what this is about, but it's my example of movement. Our last principle of art is repetition or pattern. We think of things that are woven, things that are printed. We have lots of things that are patterned. We see it all the time. And we also see things that aren't necessarily a pattern, literally exactly the same thing repeated, but they're repeating a form. They're repeating some element of the artwork. Someone once pointed out to me that I seem to have a lot of things in my house that are examples of repetition and a series of things, and it is true. This is a large poster. It's old. It's from France. It's 4 feet tall by 6 feet wide. A friend of mine has wanted it for the 20 years that I've known him, and we could never find another one. He finally found one. He's a sign painter, so he loves the fact that this advertisement for an old French paint, which was a very hardy exterior paint, is advertised by 3 old factory men who are painting each other. They must be sign painters like him. They are painting a message on each other's backs, and I think it's wonderful. So that is my ripple lamp painting, and it is 2 pieces which are joined together, the kind of thing that would have been applied to a building as a billboard. So we've reached the end of our review of elements and principles of design. I hope you found it more interesting than Dakota did, because she fell asleep quite a while ago, and she's letting me do this all by myself. I don't know if she'll be able to help me with the rest of the exam review, but she really wasn't a big help with this. So good luck. Hope this is helpful. Happy studying.